How does line weight work in architecture? My name is Adi and I work for UR Studio. Today I'm going to go over some of the things when it comes to line weight in architecture, how to use it and what line weight really is. Line weight is the visual lightness, darkness or heaviness of a line within a drawing. In any architectural drawing, from a sketch to construction documentation, the interplay of different reveal line weights is used to communicate depth, importance, and proximity. To make this presentation really simple and straightforward, I'm going to draw a very simple 2-car garage. I'll start with drawing 5 lines, and each line is going to double in size. So I'll go with A1 all the way through A5. A1 is going to be the thinnest line and A5 is going to be the thickest line. If you ever wondered what is a line weight and why is it so important, line weights are important because they help our eyes to detect whether the item is bigger or smaller, further away or closer to us. Oftentimes it's hard to see those things on a paper because it's just a paper, it's flat, but the line weight creates that illusion and sort of fakes it to your eye to make your eye believe that that item is really there in front of you rather than being a flat 2D surface. Please try not to confuse line type with line thickness. Those are two different things. Line type in architecture can be a dashed line or center line or dotted line or just a straight solid line, while a line with different thicknesses is what creates that illusion of something is being closer or further away from you. As far as I know, there can only be 5 lines. First one is a no line, meaning the line is not even there, it's invisible, or in AutoCAD we name it no plot. Second line is the thin line. Third line is the medium line. Fourth is the thick line, and fifth is solid hatch. So basically everything is black or everything is solid. Whatever color it ends up being is just that color. So like the whole screen is blue or black or whatever color it ends up being. Basically the whole page is that color. Not to confuse this with the actual thickness of the line that you can have. You can have as many as you want, but we at UR Studio tend to go with 5. Simplicity is the key. You do not want to have 150 different line thicknesses because that just becomes too messy, too crazy, too confusing. You don't need that. A good practice is to have about 5 total. So in the real world, we see things in atmosphere perspective, and what atmosphere perspective is, it's also called an aerial perspective. It's when your eyes are able to detect the difference in depth change. Atmosphere perspective method of creating the illusion of depth or recession in painting or drawings by modulating colors to simulate changes affected by the atmosphere on the colors of things seen at a distance. I'm using Photoshop application to draw this illustration for you. Photoshop is a great tool to do similar work. In fact, Photoshop is probably the only or the best application out there to edit pictures, do post-production, to do sketches, and the list just goes on. I chose to use this software because it is very user-friendly and has no limits. While this is not the best application to do construction documentation or to draw something professionally to scale, for presentation and purpose only, this application will do the job. Please note that this drawing is not to scale. I'll just be going over line weight when it comes to this 20 by 30 2-car garage. So a construction floor plan, in other words, is a section. While we don't call it a section plan, it really is a section plan. What a floor plan is, essentially, it's just you cutting through a building horizontally. And if you were to look down from above when the building is being sliced in half, is what a floor plan is. Now, in order to not make it too boring for the viewer, this is when line weight comes in handy. Just remember this golden rule. Things that are far away are lower in contrast. In other words, whatever is closer to you is bolder, thicker, and darker. Anything that's further away from you will be thinner, lighter, and faded. You'll notice that I'm showing all of my text in red. And while this is not a typical practice in architecture, some companies are now switching to colored text, and some of them do highlight important text in red. Please do verify with your local officials. Make sure it is okay to do in your region. This is how I go about drawing a floor plan, building section, and or a wall section. Whatever goes in contact with the section cut plane is what's going to be the thickest, darkest line. Then everything below or behind is going to be thinner. And as it goes further away from your eyesight, it's going to be thinner and thinner and thinner. You can also use the fog effect where it gets to the point where it becomes invisible. When drawing construction documentation, it is essential to focus on your line weight. If all you can remember from this presentation, remember this rule of thumb. When drawing construction documentation, it is essential to focus on your line weight. Remember that whatever is closer to your eyesight is what's going to be thicker. Now, whatever is further away from your cut plane or your eyesight is what's going to be thinner. That's all you have to remember. Now, just a quick reminder, if you are the designer or if you're the architect, it is your job. It is our job to do well. We have to do whatever it takes to make our drawings look as clean and as realistic as possible. Line weight is one of the most important things in art. This area of architecture must be mastered before any other subject. When you're finally done setting up your line weight scale, we have to do what's called an outline. We outline our exterior elevation, building sections, wall sections, and even our typical details. This is a very common practice in architecture. The practice of outlining the silhouette of the object in architecture rather differs from the practice in the art. They tend not to do that, whereas in architecture it's okay to do that. We at UR Studio are practicing this method. Since the construction documentation is not only about the artistic look, it is also about making the elevation pop. It stands out from anything else that you'd find on the sheet. Cars, trees, humans, animals. Our goal is to make our clients fall in love with the future structure that they've been dreaming about. I want to emphasize that when it comes to exterior elevations, please pay extra attention to the line weight and the output of your presentation. As you probably already know that oftentimes in applications such as AutoCAD, Revit, SketchUp, and any other 3D based or 2D based software, we tend to add or insert what's called blocks. While there's nothing wrong with doing that, depending on where you got it. For example, if you got it from online, what you'd need to do first is clean it up and set it on layer 0 in AutoCAD, for example. This way, if the block comes in corrupted, broken, or too heavy, you would purge it, set it on one layer, and then you would import it into the software you're working in. This way, it protects you from bringing in all the extra junk into your drawing. It would be really embarrassing if you have submitted your project and let's say the project file, AutoCAD for example, the client goes in and finds layers, goes through them and sees some www.hackblocks.com or something similar. That is very unprofessional and I advise you to never end up with something like that. Another very important thing to remember when downloading or drawing blocks is to make sure they do not stand out. When it comes to construction documentation, perhaps you're working on exterior elevations. What are you trying to show? Are you really trying to show off the people, cars, vegetation, trees, nature? No. Your goal is to draw really beautiful, really attractive exterior elevation so that the client can absolutely fall in love with that. The block is just a supporter. You just want to bring it a little closer to the reality or how the house would look in reality. But you do not want to draw clients' attention to any of those blocks. You do want to draw their attention to their future house. We especially do not want to make our vehicle blocks to be better looking than the house or a building itself. The idea is to sell the house or a building, so make it so gorgeous that the client would be overwhelmed with its beauty and would be excited and would want to hire us over and over and over again. You'll notice that in this presentation I'm coloring my exterior elevations. Yes, we are allowed to color our exterior elevations. There are just a few problems with colored exterior elevations. I'll name a few of them. Very first reason why architects, designers avoid doing colored exterior elevations. First would be the budget. Rarely does someone getting paid for adding colors and making it look extra pretty. Usually we have to work with a small budget. Second biggest reason that I can think of is that a lot of people are colorblind, and while they may not be aware of that fact, It's possible that they're just tiny bit colorblind, so their blue may not be the same as your blue. Their pink or red or blue may not be the same as your pink, red and blue. By adding beautiful colors, you may be held accountable for later. Third reason would be when it comes to scanning and reprinting. Oftentimes this is what happens in the real world. You print a high quality set in colors. Someone goes, takes that set, scans it, and then plots it black and white. Guess what? A week later, someone goes and rescans it and plots it again. Quality just totally ruins. Now on top of that, when you had colors, they will look nasty after you've scanned them once. But thanks to technology, we can now send our PDF files digitally, and hopefully they will not be corrupted or exploded into another type of format. There are many other reasons why you want to avoid doing exterior elevations in colors. However, they do look a lot better, and I do recommend doing those, and I do recommend practicing your skills so that you could do an astonishing job, and hopefully you can avoid all those problems that I have listed. Now, colors really do help you visualize the house better. Whatever you draw, colors will absolutely do the job. If you do it right, colors will absolutely make your drawing look way better. But keep in mind that colors aren't the only thing that can make your drawing look astonishing. Now let's look into everything else that can make your drawing look really nice. The question is, how do we make our exterior elevations look as realistic as possible? The list is as follows. First, draw all of your lines proportions correctly. Then, set all of your line scales correctly. Use only up to 5. Once done, draw a really thick, dramatic ground line. Then hatch the structure where applicable, representing finishes and materials. Use a solid gray for glass. When using colors, add a little bit of blue. Please see our standards for the reference. Once done, add shadows. Shadows should not be dramatic. They should not draw attention to themselves. Not too much, not too dark. Very light, and only create shadow for whatever is 2 inches recessed or more. Do not do a 1-inch window trim lip or do something similar. It is silly and waste of time. Next would be adding colors. Only if applicable. You may want to consider using colors if we're being paid a little extra for the project, or if the client has specifically asked for it and paid for. Here's a little disclaimer for the colors. Is to avoid it at all costs if we were not asked to add them, if the client did not pay for the extra beauty, and or if the client is very particular, cranky or picky. This may just create so much more work for you later on. There are so many colorblind people, and when it comes to colors, you may just get yourself in trouble by adding colors to your existing elevations. In my case, I am the client. I am very positive that I'm a very nice client. So I do not need to worry about this subject, and I can easily go ahead and proceed with colors. Stay or skip to the end of the video to see the final result. Again, this is a little silly to draw building sections, floor plans, exterior elevations in Photoshop. However, this is just for the presentation purpose. Ideally, you would want to do this in a professional software such as AutoCAD, Revit, and whatever other application is trendy nowadays. When I'm drawing my exterior elevations, you'll notice that I first start with the thinnest line I have available, which is A5. I want to get the rough shape in first. As soon as I'm done with that, I then proceed with changing the line weight. Remember, the goal is to set things on the dark, thicker line weight if it's closer to us. I use A5 for the ground, and I usually do 3 or 4 or up to 5 lines. I make it really bold and dramatic. Then I use A4 for the outline of the building, and I literally outline the whole building. This practice would not be okay if this was pure art. For architecture, again, it is okay to do that. This will draw viewers' attention. Once done, I then look at all the bumps out or whatever is sticking out from the face of the building. In this case, I have the awning sticking out and the concrete slab. So I'll go ahead and outline the slab concrete landing with A3 as well as the awning above with the same A3 layer. This will create the illusion that those two parts of the building are a lot closer to our eye than the building itself. For that, we use the layer A3, and A3 is the third thickest line weight that we have. Now you want to hold on with the hatch and wait all the way until the end when you're completely done with all the line weight. I will then use A2 for our window opening and door opening. The fascia lines will also be on A2. Everything else goes on A1, which is the thinnest line weight that we have. Keep in mind that in AutoCAD you have colors 8 and 9, which are a lot thinner than the red color. But we are saving those colors for something else in case something else needs to be thinner. We are now done assigning line weights to our exterior elevation. We can go ahead and proceed with adding the hatch, which also is known as poché. One very important thing to remember when adding hatch is to always set it back behind lines. This is critically important when working in vector-based applications. If you do not do that, what will happen is when you will zoom in on that part where the hatch meets the line, you will see that the hatch overlaps the line, and so that the line will be no longer pure and solid. When it comes to symbol annotations, blocks and stuff like that, those things should be made in standards and they should not be changed. We have our standards all made up, and at this point we're not changing them. So we don't have to waste time monkeying around with those things. They're all done, quality control approved, and set in stone. No standards should ever be changed or modified without the owner's approval. If you're just setting up all of your standards and you're trying to figure out all of the outlines, hidden lines, center lines, notes, thin lines, reference lines, hatch lines, this will take you quite some time. Please also keep in mind that architectural drawings are very different from engineering drawings. When it comes to architectural drawings, you can find as many as 20 up to like 50-60 different line weights. Not that it's suggested, but you can. Our goal is to stick to up to 5. Now, believe it or not, but engineering drawings only require 2 line weights. Construction drawings, of course, could have up to 5. When it comes to shadow, it should be your last task. Think of a shadow as a cherry on the pie. You don't put the cherry on the pie until the cake is done completely. Shadows are nice, but they should be drawn correctly, otherwise they can corrupt the drawing. Shadow is a dark area where the light from a light source is blocked by an object. It occupies all of the 3-dimensional value behind an object, with the light in front of it. The cross-section of a shadow is a 2-dimensional silhouette or reversed projection of the object blocking the light. When you show the shadow on the exterior elevations, make sure to use up to 3 different fades. Despite the amount of line weights that you can have on your construction documentations, try to avoid having more than 5 different thicknesses when it comes to the line itself. The line weight subject is a very important subject in architecture, and it should be taken very seriously. I use AutoCAD for most of my drawings, and in AutoCAD it's very easy to manipulate lines. In AutoCAD you can scale line weights proportionally in layout with the plot scale. Typically, line weights specify the line width of the plotter's object and are plotted with the line width the size regardless of the plot scale. Most often you use the default plot scale of 1:1 when plotting a layout. Now when it comes to different types of line, there are only 5 different types of lines. The 5 basic kinds of lines are vertical, horizontal, diagonal, curved, and zigzag. If you're doing manual drafting, your story is going to be completely different when it comes to line weight. Traditionally, you would generate a heavier line by applying more pressure or by angling the pencil to produce a thicker line. Today you can find pens with different nib sizes and pencils and leads with different hardnesses to aid the process of producing different line weights. Additionally, all architectural computer-aided design programs have built-in system for generating and managing line weights in architectural drawings. These systems range from the simple, closest lines are darker, further away are lighter, to the highly complex. Elements in the drawings have predetermined line weights based on the value decisions made by the architect. Before jumping into those more intense situations, it is important to have a grasp of what line weight mean and how do they read, and what you should consider when incorporating them into your own work. There are a number of different situations in which architects use the line weight. Line weight is also a notation device, and it can be used to identify different types of information which are relayed in the same drawing. It is used in absolutely all drawing types: sketches, sections and elevations, plans, diagrams, perspectives and details. When lines come in direct contact with sun, this is when the story changes just a bit. When you're adding your shadows, please think of where the sun is hitting the surface. This way you'll know that whatever line is the furthest from the sun should be the darkest, while this rule may only apply when you're working on the 3D perspective view. In the 2-dimensional drawing, however, the only way we can create a depth is by fooling the eye using black, gray and white to create a 3-dimensional space. Another quick tip to remember is that line weights are intimately involved and related with the shadow. When drawing any type of drawing, you always have to think ahead and always ask yourself questions. For example, when you have your line weights down, you'll need to decide how heavy is the shadow, where is the light source, and how bright or dark does the shadow need to be. Those are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself when working on the exterior elevations or anywhere where the shadow and the line weights work together. Okay, let's wrap up for this presentation. If you have any additional questions regarding line weights and shadow, please contact me via Discord, and if you do not work for us, then you can contact via my social media. I'm very active on Instagram, Facebook, and I have my YouTube channel as well. So if you have any additional questions, and if you don't work for UR Studio and you would like to ask me some additional questions, you're welcome to get a hold of me, preferably via Instagram. If you don't have Instagram, you can get a hold of me via Facebook. And if you're a licensed architect here in Washington State or anywhere in USA, in fact, anywhere in the world, I'd like to be friends with you. And not only if you're an architect, if you're a designer, drafter, I want to be friends with you. So add me on social media and let's be friends. And as always, have a wonderful day. Adios, goodbye, пока.